I'm Jim Cheshire, and this is our screencast series on using Windows Azure Web Sites. In this screencast, I'm going to show you how you can troubleshoot a slow website using failed request tracing. This is a website that I created in Windows Azure Web Sites, and if I browse to this website, you'll notice that my home page takes a long time to load. It takes about 10 seconds. And this is something that it didn't used to do. It's a new development. And I'd like to troubleshoot why it's taking this long. I can do that using failed request tracing. So let's switch back over to the Azure portal and click on my website. And then I'll click the Configure tab and scroll down to the Diagnostics section. Here I'm going to turn on failed request tracing. And notice when I do that it turns the setting purple. That's because the setting has now changed, but I haven't yet saved that configuration. So to do that, I'll click Save. And now I have failed request tracing enabled for this site. There's one problem though, and that is failed request tracing will only give me a trace file if my HTTP status is between 400 and 999. And what I want to do is get a failed request tracing log on a 200 status, in other words, a successful request, because my request is succeeding, it's just taking a long time. So I'll need to tweak the failed request tracing settings a little, and I'll do that in a web.config file. So let's click back, and I'll select my website. It's already selected here because I only have one. And I'm going to click Web Matrix here to download a local copy of this website to my machine. If you don't already have Web Matrix installed, this will also automatically install Web Matrix for you, and it will configure anything on your local machine that's necessary in order for this site to run. So in my particular case, it prompts me for a configuration change to make ASP.NET 4 work, so I'm going to click Continue. And then it makes a few other changes to my site so it'll run correctly, and then opens it here in Web Matrix. Notice that the URL has a port number of 6208. That is actually serving from IIS Express, so you don't have to have IIS installed locally on your machine in order to do this. Alright, let's click Files, and I've got a web.config file already in the site. That's because I created one earlier using Web Matrix. This is just your basic plain vanilla ASP.NET 3.5 web.config file. And before I continue, I will tell you that the steps I'm taking here don't require that your website be an ASP.NET website. You can do this with PHP or HTML or whatever page types you serve from your website. Just so happens in my case, it's ASP.NET. So I'll open this and I'll scroll down and look for the system.webserver section, and that's where the configuration is for the web server itself. And right here before the closing system.webserver line, I'm going to add a little bit of XML code. Notice that I've got a failure definition here set for status codes 200 through 999. So that's going to give me that failed request tracing file on a status code of 200. And I've also added a path here for only ASPX pages. Now your path may be different. You'll have to change that setting possibly based on the needs for your particular site. So let's go ahead and close this, and I'll save changes. Now I need to get that change up to my website in Azure, and I can do that by simply clicking Publish. Web Matrix already has the information necessary to publish this up to my Azure website. So I'm going to continue here. And now we have a published web.config file that has been tweaked a little bit so we can get our failed request tracing log on a 200 status. So I'm going to click this link, and then I'm going to stop this actually. And the reason I did that is because you'll remember that my failed request rule was tracing star.aspx pages. So I can't just request the default document here. I have to actually explicitly request default.aspx. So I'll hit enter here. Now my request is for a page that ends with ASPX, and so I'll get that failed request tracing log. All right, Now, the failed request tracing log is generated in the log files directory of your website. So to get to that, you're going to need to use an FTP client. I use FileZilla. Let me switch over to that now for you. So this is the FileZilla client. And because I've connected to my website before, I've got it listed here in the Quick Connect bar. You can get the information necessary to connect to your website using FTP by downloading the published profile for your website, and you can do that from the Azure portal. And once I log in here, I'm going to go into the log files directory. And in here, I've got another folder, W3SBC, with a random number after it. I'm going to go in there, and I will see that I have an XML file and an XSL file. The XML file is my failed request tracing log, and the XSL file is an XSL style sheet that allows you to view that in a very convenient format in Internet Explorer. So let's download this directory to my local machine so that I can do that. I'm going to just dump it onto my desktop. And now we'll open that and look at it in Internet Explorer. So here are the files that I downloaded from my log files directory in Azure. And I'll double click on the FR000001, however many zeros there are. And notice I get a very nice format here. That's because of that XSL file. So you want to make sure you download that as well. I can see here that the time taken on this was exactly 10 seconds. In a real world scenario, of course, probably not going to hit it right on the nose on some particular number of seconds, but either way. I have a status code of 200. And if I want to see details on where I spent my time, what I can do is look at this compact view. This will show me every event that occurred while this web page was being processed by IIS. And the column on the far right shows me the time. Now, I already know that this page took 10 seconds to download to my machine. So what I would want to do here is look for any particular event that occurred that took somewhere in the vicinity of 10 seconds. So I see here that most of these, the time that IIS recorded for the event was 6:33 p.m. and 16 seconds. But if I keep scrolling down, I can see right here that there was a 10-second delay. So this is where I'm spending my time. Notice that event number 112 is ASP.NET page load enter, and the time for that is 6:33 and 16 seconds. And then 113 is ASP.NET page load leave, which is 18:33 and 26 seconds. So I know now that where I'm spending my time is in page load. Does that tell me what I need to know to solve my problem? It might. It depends on how much code I've got in page load. But in most situations, it might not get you exactly to where you need to be in order to fix the problem. So one thing that you can do is you can actually add trace output to your failed request tracing files by using trace.write in your ASP.NET page. Of course, this is something that's specific to ASP.NET. So if you're using PHP or HTML pages, this doesn't help you. But if you are using an ASP.NET application and you see that you're spending your time inside some particular ASP.NET event, you can add lines that look like this to your code, and then that allows you to get that output inside of your FREB traces. So what I'd like to do at this point is I'm going to go into the page load event for this page, and I'm going to add the lines that you see here around some code where I connect to a database. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm thinking by looking at the code in my page load that maybe that's where I'm spending my time. And after I do that, I'm going to have to make one more change to my web.config file so that the failed request tracing file will pick up those ASP.NET tracing events. So let's switch back over to Web Matrix, and I'll open my web.config file. And this time, right here in the system.web section, I'm going to add a line here that will enable ASP.NET tracing. I'm not going to set any of the other properties of ASP.NET tracing. I'm just going to enable it. That's it. So let's close and save this, and once again we'll publish that up to Azure. So I've done a couple of things just to recap. I've added the trace.write lines to my page load event, and then I've added the trace enabled equals true to my web.config file. Now let's go back to Internet Explorer and let's request that page again. So here's my page. I'm going to refresh this. And I did a shift refresh just to make sure that it actually makes that request against the IIS server and not through the local cache. Now let's flip back over to FileZilla and look at our trace file that was generated. So I'm going to go into this directory and let's refresh here. Now I have a second trace file, and I'm going to copy that into the same directory where the other trace file is located, which is directory right here. Now let's flip over to that directory, and I'll go ahead and open up that trace file in Internet Explorer. Switch back over to Compact View, and I'm going to scroll down to where I see that 10-second delay again. So it's right here, but notice this time I have a couple of extra events. Now I have an ASP.NET page trace write event, and it shows me that the first one here is start connection to database. That was at 18:41 and 11 seconds, and then connection to database completed, and that was 18:41:21. So now I know exactly where I'm spending that time just by simply adding a little bit of instrumentation to my ASP.NET code. So I appreciate you watching this. I hope that this will help you if you encounter a situation where your websites are taking longer than normal to load. And I look forward to talking to you again in our next screencast.